let's talk about HIV.
Okay.
There was a death sentence, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then it's like, okay, they kind of started figuring out maybe how to save some lives, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as many people that was dying as it was initially. And so now there's more help. I guess there's more medicine that you can take to kind of suppress it. And I don't know.
All right. So just the fact that you made the statement about it being a death sentence in the time frame that we grew up, 70s, 80s was when everybody started hearing about this disease that was, people were seeing was taking out like homosexual males. And it was just like, okay, well, this is something that the demographic of people is dealing with, so we don't have to worry about that. But they were just seeing people dying, and so then people were trying to figure out what was going on, and people started being ostracized, and people just started like being really afraid of everything because they were trying to figure out what's going on. There were no real treatment at that point in time. Time went on, and they started developing medications, and so when you made a statement, there's more medications. Actually, there's less medications because people were on 20 and 40 pill regimens toward the end of the 80s to prolong their lives. And now people can get by with just a pill that is going to prolong and to help them to get through this, what was once a fatal disease, a now chronic disease. So the same way people think about managing diabetes or high blood pressure, this is the same thing with HIV now. It is a manageable chronic disease that people can take a pill and be healthy. Because the main thing is with HIV unchecked becomes AIDS. And AIDS is a diagnosis that you get when you have 3 or more opportunistic infections. Opportunistic infections are diseases that our immune system can typically take care of. It's certain types of cancer, pneumonia, funguses, and other things that our body is able to get rid of based upon our immune system. But once you have 3 or more of those, you get a diagnosis of AIDS. When your white blood cell count drops below 200, you get a diagnosis of AIDS. So anything above 200, you are just living with HIV.
Hold on, let me make sure I understand. So you just listed some diseases that I did not mesh with AIDS. You said if you have 2 or 3?
Yeah, 2 or 3 opportunistic infections.
2 or 3 what's the word? Opportunistic infections.
Yeah, so
2 or 3.
Yeah, so understand this, like our immune system is an amazing thing. When I'm talking to people, I describe it as like the military of the body. It goes through, the white blood cells go through, and anything that's not supposed to be there, the immune system attacks. And so with HIV, the virus actually attacks the immune system and it targets the white blood cells and it kills those white blood cells, actually turns those white blood cells into factories to produce the HIV virus. So your goal when you are HIV positive is to keep your immune system count high and your HIV level low. Our immune system is able to fight off a myriad of different pathogens on any given day. And so like even right now, there are certain cancers and other things that are running through our body that our immune system is keeping in check. A yeast infection can be something that takes somebody out who has AIDS. So what I tell people is, and what the information is, it's not HIV and AIDS that ends up killing somebody. It's those opportunistic infections that people have. When your body is just bombarded with all these different infections that your body can't fight it. And so somebody who has AIDS, they're more in danger of becoming sick from somebody who is quote unquote healthy. Yeah. And catch something from them.
Okay, so I'm trying to wrap my head around this because you were saying something that I never really knew. So let me go back. In massage school, they talk about massaging people that have HIV, and they hone in on if you are sick, you are more dangerous to that person that has HIV than they are to you. So we naturally think, oh, well, they have HIV. No, I don't want to catch anything. But they're like, no, because their immune system is so fragile. If you're sick, you don't need to have that appointment. So that's interesting. But are you saying that if someone has HIV, I may be ignorant here, but just work with me. So let's just say someone contracts HIV through sex or needles. Mm-hmm. So they got that, and that's one thing, right? Mm-hmm. They don't have AIDS, they have HIV.
Correct.
So the HIV is manageable.
Mm-hmm.
If they end up getting pneumonia and let's just say a yeast infection and some type of other immune disease,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that they have those three now attacking their system, are you saying that that's what can actually lead it to become AIDS?
Well, like I said, it's certain opportunistic infection. It's got to be, basically, it's anything that's going to attack your immune system that's going to cause your white blood cell count to drop further. Because, as your body has, let's just say HIV, it's fighting that virus as well as fighting all those other things at the same time. So, it's that onslaught that is causing that challenge. But 3 opportunistic infections, like I said, the cancers, the pneumonias, those, certain yeast infections or whatever that get into your body. Yeah. Yes.
So you cannot have HIV and still end up with AIDS, according to
No. So HIV is the virus, and you're not going to go from not having that virus to having AIDS. So there are other immunodeficient viruses, disorders that can affect your immune system, but those are not HIV. That's not AIDS.
So HIV has to be the basis.
Right.
And then other viruses or other immune deficiencies on top of HIV is
Right.
what causes the body to be overloaded and turn into AIDS.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. I did not know that. I knew there was HIV and I knew HIV had become more manageable and it didn't automatically mean AIDS. I knew that part, but I did not understand or did not know about you have HIV and then some of the other diseases or illnesses that attack your immune system, the overload of those and white blood cells.
The deficiency of your white blood cells.
So the T cells, you're not supposed to have a whole bunch of T cells, right?
T cells are what's in your body that's, with the white blood cells that actually attacking those things that's not supposed to be there. So even with your immune system, like if you got too many white blood cells in your body, that can be problematic as well. That's something totally different from HIV or anything. That's a whole nother thing because, there's certain conditions that your immune system, your body will turn in and attack itself. But this is something different from what we're talking about.
Okay. All right. I think I get it.
Okay.
I think I get it.
If nothing else, cdc.org. Please go to that because there are a lot of people that because they don't hear about HIV so much in the news like it was in the 80s and early 90s. A lot of people that come in contact, like, we still talking about AIDS. I thought that there was a cure for that. So you'll have those type of conversations. You have to remind people. Like I had relatives that bring, well, look at Magic Johnson. They must have had a cure. The medications, the regimens that are there have allowed people to have that prolonged life. Those medications have allowed people to live a lot longer and to not see those gaunt figures that we saw in the 80s and 90s.
So if someone has HIV, and excuse my ignorance on the topic, but if someone has HIV, they have to be on medication for life. Correct.
They need to be on medication. It's called antiretroviral therapies because there are people who, for whatever reason, are not in treatment. And, sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's other sociological issues that prevent them. And you just have some people who just don't want to be on medications. But for the most part, if you want to make sure that you keep your immune system in check, you want to be on those antiretroviral medications. The other thing is that people are have to remind people or to teach people is that out of all the sexually transmitted diseases and infections that people can get, HIV is one of the more challenging, if not the most difficult to get, because if you're not coming in contact with blood, semen, pre-seminal fluid, vaginal secretions, anal fluid, or breast milk that has HIV virus, you're fine.
People come into contact with all of that stuff all the time.
Well, if they can come in contact with those things, they don't always necessarily. But I'll say make this point, and then I'll come back to that. When you have sexually transmitted diseases and infections that are skin to skin, which means that you don't even have to have sex with somebody, and you can get it versus having to come in contact with one of those 6 fluids, HIV is relatively more challenging to get. And so ways to reduce the blood, semen, vaginal secretion, preseminal fluid, vaginal fluid, and anal fluid are barrier methods. So those are the condoms, those are the dental dams, those are the flavored condoms, those are, dental dam. Those are those latex sheets. They look like fruit roll-ups when you open them out. They are square latex sheets that you place over an anus or vagina when people are having oral sex.
Oh, okay. All right. So, okay then. All right. Well, that's interesting. And it does not prevent, I guess, the feel. Is created to not decrease the feel, but increase the protection.
Well, I mean, so, and a lot of people, when you start talking about barrier methods, they're so in tune to, well, it doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel this way. There are different things that people can do in order to make it feel more natural. And yeah, it's not going to be 100% natural in that regard. But like in reference to condom and condom usage, there are thinner condoms and there are lubricants that people can use that make it feel more natural. With the thinner condoms, you still can have the same types of sensations that's there. But at the end of the day, it's just like, you have to ask yourself, is it more important to have that feeling or is it more important to have my health long term?
This really gets into a whole nother subject. This is why I think the human race have gone off the deep end because a lot of people, not all, a lot of people don't want to settle down. They don't want to be with one person. So it's like, if you don't want to wear condoms and don't want to have all of these barriers, and when the condom doesn't feel natural and all of these things, then settle down with one person that you love, that y'all can be happy together, that y'all get along, that y'all can do life with, and just enjoy each other. But a lot of people want such a variety, male and female. Men got all the bad raps of, being promiscuous and being for the streets. But there's a lot of women for the streets as well. So, but people are out there doing all these things with no barrier, no protections, none of this stuff, but then don't want to end up with a disease. But you're sleeping with people who sleeping with people who sleeping with people. You sleeping with people, they're sleeping with people. And everybody knows this. Everybody understands this. But there's no responsibility for protecting yourself, protecting the other person. And maybe I'm just, I won't say I'm old fashioned, but I don't really get what's so wrong about just settling down.
I don't even think it's a statement of right or wrong. And, we grew up in the same time frame. And so, we have a very similar upbringing. So for us, like a monogamous relationship is the type of thing that was instilled in us. Polygamy, has been something that people have talked about, since biblical days. I'm not pro, I'm not anti, but, even if it's just like, okay, hey, you all are in your committed pod or whatever, y'all keep it there, get tested, making sure that y'all are staying within that. If that's fine for them, let it work for them. But in reference to, people want to try different things, this microwave society that we have, the instantaneous gratification, I see this and I just want to have this, I just want to try this. You have a lot of people who are just so fed up with that ideal relationship because of the challenges that they've had. We grew up in two-parent households, and we both have friends and family members and other people that's been around us that didn't have that same model demonstrated to us. So it's kind of hard for some people to imagine having a committed relationship between two people because they've never seen it or they've never seen it work. Because even as we're looking at stuff that's in the media and stuff that's in entertainment, with us doing stuff in entertainment, we see relationships, in the past 30 to 40 years between mutually exclusive couples is not one of those things that's really broadcast or shown in a positive light. People do things, say things, and show things other than that. And so, I'm not going to always or exclusively say it's the media's fault that does it, because you have to have somebody there, that going back to we were talking about kids earlier, having somebody there that can mediate, talk you through and show you and talk to you about the images images that are being seen. So we have to, as a society or as individuals, come together and hold conversations with people to show them the benefits of being in an exclusive relationship with someone. We have to do those things and show those things that show the advantages. And definitely when you start talking about sexually transmitted disease and infection, the fewer number of partners that you have reduces the number or the chances of coming in contact with any of the sexually transmitted diseases or infections. So, that's a positive. And even as we talk about the different barrier methods we mentioned earlier, even something as simple as using lubricant can help reduce the spread of certain things because you're cutting down on the friction. When you have friction, it creates fissures, tears, and microscopic tears that allow for the exchange of different pathogens. Even doing that is something that can reduce. But definitely, if nothing else, if anybody who is not trying to be in a mutually exclusive relationship, make sure you're getting tested. Make sure your partner is getting tested. Can reduce the number of sex partners you have. Use lubricants. But just be proactive about your health. In reference to preventing HIV, there are medications that people can take to prevent getting HIV. But even with that, like I said, there are other sexually transmitted diseases and infections that people can get. No, they're not going to kill you in many cases, but they can make your life really, really challenging. People are walking around with a lot of different things right now, and they don't know it because some things have symptoms and some things don't. So it's just a matter of being proactive about your health.
So let's talk about herpes for a minute. And herpes is another sexually transmitted disease. It's incurable, right?
Correct.
What I did not realize is how popular herpes is, how many people...
widespread. Let's not call it popular because it's just
widespread.
Widespread. Let's just say it's widespread.
Let's say widespread. How widespread herpes is. I was on TikTok and several people have TikTok channels talking about, herpes, and they have herpes. And so herpes was one of those things where it's just like, oh, you have herpes, and now I see how people are having more open discussions about it, open discussions about the outbreaks, because you need to tell your partner. Like if you have herpes, right? How is that translated in your opinion? You meet someone, you have herpes. Some people are not going to want to be in a relationship with somebody who has herpes. Mm-hmm. Unless they also have herpes or they know enough about it to know how to prevent getting herpes. But if somebody meets someone, they don't have herpes. You have herpes, or not you, but that person has herpes. I mean, I don't know your situation, but I'll edit that out. I'll edit it out. Don't worry about it.
No, you let it stay in there.
Okay, I'll let it stay. So let's just say that, someone meets someone, that person has herpes. The person that they meet do not have herpes. They've got the right thing to do is to tell them before they're sexually involved, I have herpes. So either that person is going to, I won't say be educated enough, because I can't even say, well, if a person is educated enough, they'll be okay being in a relationship with someone that has herpes. I don't think that's a fair thing to say, because once a person gets herpes, it's not curable. So now that I'm understanding how widespread herpes is, I'm kind of toying with, is it fair or is it unfair to not want to be in a relationship with someone that has herpes if you don't have herpes? Because it's so widespread, you can get it from, kissing or whatever.
Let me just stop you a little bit. Go ahead. No. All right, so I don't have TikTok, but it's encouraging to know that there are channels that are out there that are trying to lessen the stigma that's attached to it. I'm happy to hear that.
Wait, you don't have TikTok?
I don't have TikTok.
That's a problem, but
it's okay. Whole thing.
That's okay.
So 1 in 5 people have herpes. When I'm doing my sex ed classes, I stopped doing it. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One of y'all got herpes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the next set of 5. One of y'all has herpes. It's just that widespread. If you've had any type of intimate contact with somebody, you've come in contact with somebody who's had herpes. The thing with herpes is when we start talking about STDs and STIs, the two brands of herpes that we talk about, herpes simplex 1, herpes simplex 2, but there are multiple different strands of herpes, but 1 and 2 are the ones we talk about. Herpes simplex 1 is typically the cold sores or fever blisters that people have. Usually describe it as herpes 1 is anything that typically is above the waist. Herpes simplex 2 is the genital herpes. That's the one that's below the waist. But you can have herpes simplex 2 in your mouth. You can have herpes simplex 1 in your genitals. So those interplaying types of herpes, people have herpes. And just because they have a cold sore doesn't mean that they got it from something sexually involved. Maybe as a child, somebody was having an outbreak, they kissed the baby, and years later, it's just like, I don't know where the herpes came from. This herpes outbreak came from.
So let me ask you this. Hold on. And again, excuse my ignorance for all of this. But so let's just say someone that has herpes simplex 2, which is below the waist, right? Mm-hmm. So if they have herpes simplex 2 and they have an outbreak, will the outbreak ever be on their mouth if they have herpes simplex 2, or will it never be on their mouth?
Well, if they come in contact with somebody who's had herpes simplex 2 and they've had oral sex, then yes, it can be there. But outside of that, if you have herpes simplex 2, its primary place to be is in the genital areas, because that's where the transmission took place. But this is where I was talking about having that barrier method. Anything that you can get in your genitals, in your penis or vagina, you can get in your mouth. So you can get gonorrhea of the mouth, chlamydia of the mouth, syphilis of the mouth, HPV of the mouth, herpes of the mouth. Anything there, you can get there. So that's the only way that herpes simplex 2 is going to be there, if you come in contact with that virus, where it plays. I put it that way.
So if someone has herpes simplex 2, they kiss a baby or a child in the mouth or near the mouth, then that child has
potentially, yeah. Because see, this is the other thing when you're dealing with herpes is you can have herpes and never have an outbreak. I've got family members and friends who, based upon tests, they have herpes in their body, but they've never knowingly had an outbreak. With herpes, you could have an outbreak every month, you could have an outbreak every few weeks, or you could never have an outbreak at all. Or, it had one in 2010 and 2022, you might have another outbreak. A lot of times with herpes, outbreaks can happen because of stress or environment or, anything that causes stress in your body. When you're not having an active outbreak, herpes congregates on like the nerve endings on your spine. And so this is why a lot of times that stress causes it to manifest itself. But somebody can still be contagious from herpes even if they're not having an outbreak. It's called viral shedding. So the virus is always replicating and getting rid of old versions of itself. And so somebody, even though they're not having a visible outbreak, could still, be infectious. So, as we talk about, once again, HIV versus STDs and STIs, it's easier to get a virus like herpes than it is HIV because it's skin to skin. So we're not having intercourse, but hey, I'm going to grind on you. And next thing you know, it's just like, well, why am I itching there? Came across herpes, and HPV is that much more prevalent than herpes is in the society. And it's skin to skin. And that's that virus that causes the genital warts, the cervical cancer, the penile cancer, the throat cancer, the anal cancer. And that's even more widespread. And even with those two particular ones, HPV and herpes, those are not considered reportable STDs, which means that, somebody could have it and yeah, you can report it, but it's not something that's really tracked because so many people in society have come across with these. It's kind of hard to keep up with those things. Mm-hmm. I want to differentiate between a sexually transmitted infection versus sexually transmitted disease. Infection is something that's typically it's curable. Usually the bacterial and parasitic infections are ones that are considered infections.
Like bacteria vaginosis?
Yes.
Okay.
The diseases like HIV, herpes, HPV, hepatitis C are those viruses that once you get them, that they're yours. You're not getting rid of those. That's considered an STD versus an STI.
Let me interrupt you for a minute. So with bacterial vaginosis, for years, healthcare providers was telling women that was not a sexually transmitted infection. Mm-hmm. Something that maybe threw off your balance. It could be anything. But I've always believed that it was sexually transmitted. What's your thought? Do you have any thoughts?
So anything that can throw off your pH, you can definitely end up getting bacterial vaginosis. But it's something that if somebody's come in contact with it, can be transmitted. I put it this way. They were making a statement saying that it was not a sexually transmitted infection in the grand scheme of what it is, but it is an infection that can be transmitted sexually. With mpox or monkeypox that we just had this big thing with, it's not a sexually transmitted disease, but it is something that can be transmitted by intimate sexual contact. In reference to relationships, it's important that people talk about if they've got a sexually transmitted disease. And just like you make a statement, somebody having herpes, you've got people who are willing to be in a relationship because they see past the disease, they see the person, and they're willing to make those connections. And so there are things that people can do, there are medications that people can do that can reduce the outbreak and can reduce the chance of transmission to someone else. And they can be on medications that can reduce the chance of them having it. But there's always that chance. There's nothing that's 100%. People have to just make a decision that this is what I'm going to do, but give people the option to say, hey, I want to be with you. And I know that you have this versus, oh, well, we've already been together, so you might as well go ahead and stay with me.
Yeah. And then I guess, even though you just said that whether you have an outbreak or not, you can still get it. Mm-hmm. But I guess definitely working together to make sure that you avoid any sexual contact, especially during those outbreaks.
Right. If you're having sex, if you plan to have sex, make sure that you know your status. Make sure you know your HIV status. Make sure that you are going and getting tested for other sexually transmitted diseases if you've already started having sex with people. In reference to HPV, we didn't really go into a lot about HPV. There's only tests for HPV for women. There's no test for men. Be mindful of your body. Look at your body. Be comfortable looking at your body so you can see if there are changes that's taking place. A lot of STDs don't have symptoms, or they might be more symptoms for one gender versus the next gender. So be mindful of your body. Keep the light on and look at your partner and see what's going on there. If you got a question about something, ask questions about something. Don't make people feel bad if they have unusual marks, because even though some STDs and STIs have like hallmark signs and symptoms, there are other things that our body does that replicates or looks like that. Just thinking about discharges when it comes to women, there are a bunch of different types of discharges that women have naturally without STDs. And so knowing what type of discharge you have is important. So know your body, get tested, take your partner to get tested, and use protection.